Okay. Uh, we've been sent a case. It was initially sent to us without any CEREC data to evaluate the plan, and uh, when we could do a single tooth without CEREC data, and maybe even two teeth without CEREC data, but when we get into a large span like this, um, it becomes a little bit harder. So, a couple of things. So, let me hide the CEREC data here so that we can kind of evaluate everything here. And my first question is going to be is what kind of guide are we going to make? So I would assume that we have all options available to us. There's a minimal amount of restorations, only one full coverage crown. That's here on tooth number 31. So we have lots of options available to us. So what I would say to us is that this is a perfect case for an OptiGuide. So what kind of data do we need to have for OptiGuide? For an OptiGuide, the good news is we have a distal extension here. We have a distal rest right here, and we have plenty of teeth on this side. So for a nice OptiGuide, we would want data that encompasses this full tooth number 31, so we have something to rest on back here. And then we need to extend at a minimum to this contralateral canine. Now, in an ideal world, I would want to go ahead and go all the way back here and include all of this data as well. So again, at a minimum, we need to get at least the contralateral canine. In an ideal world, I would like to go all the way and get the molars as well. So, with that being said, let's take a look at our CEREC data that we've captured, and we've only captured up to the midline. So, in theory and technically, we can make a guide for this. It is really pushing the limits. So, to fabricate an OptiGuide, we want to go ahead and capture at least to this contralateral canine, and in an ideal world, we want to go ahead and capture the full arch. OptiGuides, since they are milled, do not mill the undercuts, so they have a very passive fit. We need to have more stability to be able to help hold it into place. So that's why we want to go ahead and get it onto the contralateral side. So that's my only thought there. The other thing that I would look at here is the design here of the CEREC data. So again, we're going to base our plan on the CEREC data, and my question becomes is this CEREC data accurate? So one of the things that we can take a look at, and it's a good habit to have, is let us use the measure tool here, and let's measure the distance. Sorry, let's measure the distance. Uh, Let me turn this off for a second. Oops. Let's measure the distance here of this molar. So we'll get here onto one of the flat views here. We'll get it to where we can see the full width of the molar, come to our distance tool, and we'll, again, this is about an approximation. So we'll approximate that this molar is 11.5 millimeters wide. So then what I would do is I would just come over here to our CEREC data and measure how wide we've made that. And here we've made that roughly 13 millimeters wide. So about 1.5 millimeters wider than on the other side. So that type of data is going to affect our plan because while it won't affect on the molar because we want to be centered, it'll affect this premolar. So in essence, this premolar needs to be 1.5 millimeters more this way. In essence, this will actually affect this molar plan. So hopefully I'm not confusing each other here. And let's go ahead and do this for the premolar as well. And we'll come here and we can measure from here to there, and we have about 7 millimeters. We'll come over here to this side on the premolar. And we'll measure here as well. So this premolar is about the right size, 7.5 millimeters. So that's close enough. And then we'll measure this premolar here as well. We'll get it into the screen here. just like so. And now we'll go ahead and measure this one, and that one's about 8 millimeters wide. So then I would come over here back onto this side and measure this premolar, and we can see that we're about 7 millimeters wide, so about a millimeter off. So we're about a millimeter off here, half a millimeter off here, and that equals the 1.5 millimeters that were too wide on the molar. So hopefully that gives us some insight. So now this can be done. That all of what I just did there can be done on the CEREC side. So you know we could have used bioreference and reference tooth number 19 here to design number 30, tooth number 20 to design 29, and tooth number 21 to design tooth number 28. So just giving an idea here. So now let's go ahead and plan and look at the implant plans themselves. Let me get rid of some of my measurement data here so it doesn't confuse me. I'm an easily confused human being. So we'll get that designed here. Okay. So in this particular case, I want to start with our premolars. Okay, so an ideal size implant for site number 28 is going to be a 4.3. So right now we have a narrow platform implant. I'd like to go to a wider implant, which I believe we can do. We'll see. But we'll start with ideal, and we'd like to go to a 13 millimeter implant. So let's take a closer look. We're definitely away from the nerve. We have barely enough bone to be able to handle this. So let's kind of start with our plan. So the first thing I'm going to look at and critique here is the angulation of this implant. So we can see our occlusal plane is like so, and we would like that to be flat. So the only way to make that flat in this particular case would be to tilt our implant like so, and now we can get a good idea of, in an ideal world, where this implant would be placed to create flatness. Now, that is not going to be possible in this particular case because that is going to put us right into this adjacent root here. And we can actually take a look here and see how that root has tilted to the distal. So what are we going to do? We're going to have to live with it, unfortunately. So we're going to have to go back to our original plan, like so. Okay. So we know that we're going to have to compromise with this one. So what I'm going to do for the time being, I'm just going to go ahead and move this implant out of my way. And the reason I'm doing that is, while this one is a compromise, I don't want to compromise the rest of them or be forced to compromise the rest of the implants because of this single implant. So I'm going to move that out of my way right now. So let's go ahead and go to tooth number 29. And again, we've used a narrow platform implant. Let's go with our regular platform, which is a 4.3 with the active implant. Let's go to our 13 millimeters, which is our ideal size. Now again, we may go shorter, but I always like to start ideal. We know that we have some resorption, and then we'll go from there. So again, in looking at this plan, the same issue exists. We're definitely tilted. And I think part of the reason that we're tilted in this case is we were forced to because of the proximity of this implant. So, but let's go ahead and idealize that. So if we tilt it back like this, now we're starting to get a more natural occlusal plane. Now we can go ahead and move this back. Now remember from our initial discussion here that this implant, this tooth is about a half a millimeter not wide enough, and then this tooth, number 28, is about a millimeter not wide enough. So we don't want to put this one on the center here. We actually want it to be towards the distal, mesiodistally, so that when we redesign our final restorations, it'll be proper. So now we've moved it over to the distal, let's say distal center of the tooth, and then we need to go ahead and bring it into the central fossa. So we'll tilt it back just like so, and boom. Now we'll look at a bone level, and I would say that maybe we want to drop that just a hair. So I am very, very comfortable with this design right here, at least at an initial glance here. So pretty comfortable there, just because I like everything as we see it here. Okay, so now let's move on to tooth number 30 here. And again, the same thing. We can see that our occlusal plane is not so good. We know that 29 has been taken care of, so let's make 30 parallel to 29. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to come over here on our implant tab, go to change implant, and tell it to make it parallel to 29. Okay, so now when we do that, we can see that we're over done here. So we'll go ahead and undo that just a bit, maybe about like so. Okay, and now what we can see here as well is we've gone with the 4.3. I'd like to go with the 5.0. And now let's go ahead and get this centered in the bone. And let's go ahead and tilt this back to the lingual here, just like so. Now this implant looks a bit better. I think 13 is going to definitely be too long in this particular case. We can also see that our nerve mapping is off slightly. In fact, I think this is a good opportunity to go ahead and show what I would do differently here on this nerve mapping. So we can take a look at it. Let's go to our nerve tab so we can try to find our white dots. There we go. So when I see a dot like this, we definitely want to go ahead and bring it in, like so, and now it's centered. But I want to make sure that my purple line is to the top of the nerve, because that's the way I want to be. I don't care if there's space here at the bottom. I want to make sure that I'm at least to the top of the nerve with my point there. And as we come back here, same thing right there. So I want to make sure that our nerve is at the top so that when we're planning everything, we don't have big issues. And right here again, we can see this is the area that we were looking at earlier. We want to go ahead and center it, and not centered in the canal. We want it centered and then to the top of the canal like so. Okay. So now when I go back to my implant align tab, we can see our nerve is better served right there. Okay. Now in this particular case, I'd probably drop this down to 11.5, maybe even a 10 millimeter implant, and I would probably just go like so, like so. So, and then we'll center it probably to about right there. Okay. Now again on this centering, we're going to center it a little bit distal because remember this tooth was about 1.5 millimeters too wide on the mesial, so I want to be 1.5 millimeters distal of the actual the drawn center here. So it'll be like so. Now that I've got number 30 in a slightly better position, I'm going to take a closer look at number 29, and I'll go ahead and reparallel that to number 30, like so. And this still looks pretty good here. Uh, got some decisions to make right here, so we might need to revisit this one right here, just like so. And this is starting to look a lot better here now, okay? I'm starting to like this. And now see how we've adjusted these? Now I can bring number 28 and kind of bring it back in to position here. And then again, the issue that we're going to have to deal with on number 28 is it going to be too close to 29. And looking at this really may be the case. 28 really needs to be put in like so, but the root's in the way, so we don't really have much of a choice here, do we? So we're going to have to cheat on number 29 as well, just a hair like so, and that'll give me enough space to be able to get 28 in there. Okay. So hopefully this is starting to make sense. Another area to look at, if your teeth are designed correctly, we should be able to get this space in here we were having earlier. Before I moved this, these were too close together. We need to be able to get access to get both sleeves in there. So probably need to move this a hair to the distal like so. And there we go. So Now our plan is somewhat complete. Right click, clip along active slice, look at it right here, and we can see how they're not perfectly parallel, but they're certainly pretty darn close. We have the room to get the sleeves in there, where we should be slightly distal planned here because the tooth is not the right size, slightly distal planned here because the tooth is not right size, and slightly distal planned here because again the tooth is not the right size. And it looks pretty close right there. Now the next thing is going to be in comparison to the plan that we started with in this particular case. Compared to what we started with here, we can see our implants are at all different angles compared to the plan that I adjusted it to, and we can see that our implants are more aligned with each other. In an ideal world, I'd like them to be perfectly aligned, but we can't often get that, okay? So hopefully this is helpful. Let's go back and take a look at the bone width here. Certainly that is not going to work, so we're going to need to go ahead and tilt this back like so. Let me bring it up here and then move it back here to the lingual, get it better centered in the bone, and then gently tilt this back about like that. So now we have enough bone there to support the implant. So retrospectively, I'm very confident that we can put a 4.3 millimeter in here versus the 3.5. On this one, I'm confident that you can do a 4.3 millimeter here versus your initially planned 3.5 millimeter implant. And then right here, certainly I'm comfortable looking at a 5.0 implant versus your initially planned 4.3. And we can go 10 for sure. We may be able to do 11.5. Depends on your comfort level. Um, I wouldn't have too much trouble being comfortable doing an 11.5 millimeter implant here. So hopefully this has been very helpful. Sorry for the length of the video.